Welcome back. We are on show G for Primary Source China Investment. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully I don't look as blue this time, change the background, and we can see a little bit more clearly. Today on China policy, we're talking the digital currency, the E-Yuan, or the central bank digital currency, goes by a lot of names. What is it not, and where it's going? So peng.guo, when you think of the digital yuan or the E-Yuan, what's the first thing you think about?
Actually, I think about there's no any difference like the mobile payment. So you just open the app and make the payment like the WeChat Pay or Alipay. Yeah.
So Alipay and WeChat, I looked at the penetration rate, and the penetration rate is something like 95% of people who own a phone have both of those apps installed.
Yes, it's everywhere in China. I think the China skip like the check stage. United States use a check. China never have the check system, so they just move to the mobile payment. Everybody has a phone and easy to pay it or charge the money from the other people for business, for individuals.
So the E-Yuan is not a replacement or competitor to a currency, but a replacement. From what I understand, you go to the PBOC, People's Bank of China, and you take your paper money and exchange it for electronic money.
That's right. Digital yuan really have no difference compared with other IT projects. The most important thing is you need to be accepted by the market.
I saw that one of the reasons that PBOC started on this maybe half a decade ago was because the penetration rates were so high for Alipay and WeChat Pay. And those systems are actually closed systems. And those companies have done a great job of keeping money in the system in terms of offering financial products and other ways to keep money in their own system. Disintermediation of the banks is exactly what PBOC is going to do. You don't need a bank if you have a digital currency.
I think the original design purpose is really for the digital yuan to replace the cash in circulations. Obviously, China understands how powerful of the cryptocurrencies like the bitcoins. But in China, there's a lot of the fraud project related to the cryptocurrencies.
Right. PBOC wants to replace banknotes and dissuade people from nefarious transactions via cryptocurrency. So let's talk about what the E-Yuan is not. So it's not a cryptocurrency. It's not meant to compete with the currency. It's not based on the blockchain. It's not based on that type of technology. It's completely different. It's meant to substitute your paper money. It's not meant to replace the currency.
I don't think any central bank will give up control of the currency.
It's pretty obvious the reason the government wants to have a digital yuan is so they can track all payments, all companies' revenues, all individual transactions. And if you're the PBOC, if you're the People's Bank of China, that's a pretty handy aspect of managing your currency. You have complete transparency on M0, basically. So that's a very powerful tool. Now, on the other side of that, people get paranoid, like the government is going to see every transaction and they're going to be able to take their 5% revenue off the top of every business transaction.
In theory, yes, they can track the everything. And so like that, you are in a remote country area. You don't need to go to the local bank. It's very far from there to open an bank account. So you just simply get the digital yuan from the app. And so the only thing to touch the physical money is really you withdraw or input the money into the account. That's it. So it's and also it's designed for the small retail scenario. So like you purchase a coffee and whatever. If you have no internet, you have the two cell phones. You touch them together, and then you can finish the payment.
Sure. So this sounds a lot more like a domestic solution than an international, because if you read the international press, everybody seems to think that this is going to compete with US dollar globally. And I don't see it that way. I see this as a solution for China specifically and renminbi specifically. I don't see this as a competition with US dollar. And people have brought up that renminbi internationalization just flat out hasn't worked. The use of renminbi globally is still very low. It's probably lower now than it was 10 years ago. So most of the trade that's done in renminbi is done in China, and it's done through Hong Kong. Anything that's outside of China is done in Hong Kong. So it doesn't seem like this is an act to replace or to compete with US dollar.
Yeah, obviously people can think about a lot about this digital yuan. They can, if they widely use it, they might have a lot of the unexpected result. Nobody knows. This is really like the cash. So it's rather than open account to doing like that.
Yeah, it's a substitute. It's a replacement for hard cash. It's just a replacement for hard cash. Yeah. It's not a competition.
Another very important thing is like the commercial bank. They need to put the 100% of the reserve to the central bank. So that means it's not trigger the new money in the circulations.
Well, I'm sure we're going to see a lot more of the digital yuan. They're already trialing it in places like Hainan, which we've talked about before with their free trade zone. Seems to be working pretty efficiently. We'll track it and probably report back. But next up, we're going to talk capital markets. So last week we gave a few ETFs and why we like those ETFs. And today we're going to break it down a little bit further, not to lose the plot, but just to keep focused on what is China investment. And we took a fresh set of eyes and looked at it this week. And it seems like there are three ways. The first way is pure A shares. The second way is something called China, which a lot of the index providers put in a broad category. And then the third is what MSCI calls overseas China. And that's largely stocks listed in the US, the big names that everybody's familiar with, and some that are listed in other places. So those are the three areas, and the performance is vastly different. And we're going to put up some charts and go through it pretty slowly to make sure that everybody understands that these three areas have different returns. And again, that's just taking the major market index. Channel subscribers know that the major market index in China has pretty poor performance on a risk-adjusted basis. So when we go a little bit deeper, we try to find those sectors that offer better performance on a risk-adjusted basis. And Peng.Guo has some thoughts about that.
Firstly, we can see the major indices in the China, like the CS 300. That is really a major one. All the equities, pretty much all the investments, put this one as the benchmark. So we can see their performance January 2nd, 2015 to the April 16, 2021. So the annualized return is 10.5%. So not too bad. Unfortunately, we see the volatility is pretty high. So the annualized volatility is 27%. And the Sharpe ratio is not pretty good, just 0.38%. Obviously, we can use the US market. They have the 300 China Asia related ETF.
Yeah.
For the US dollar dominated 300 returns, where annualized return is only 5.7%. The Sharpe ratio is even lower, 0.175. Volatility is a little bit higher, is 32%. So that really means in China, you need most of the investors cannot suffer this kind of volatility. So they have to find ways to improve it. Like the Zhonghai indices, they have the improvement. So what's the improvement? They really find out what's the uptrend of the major index. So why you find the uptrend of the 300 index, you will see that you get a much better result. Like in the Asia market, you can reach the 16.6% of the return, and the Sharpe ratio is close to 1. Same thing in the US market. So if you just track the uptrend of the CS 300 index, the annualized return is almost 15%. The Sharpe ratio is at 0.8. Is pretty good and it's acceptable for most investors. Secondly, we need to figure out which sectors performance well.
Right.
So if you see, I just simply listed the three sectors: consumer staples, bank, and IT. So consumer staples performance the very best in the past couple of years. The annualized return even reached 27.4%. The most is from the wine, multi.
Always multi.
Yeah, always a multi. The Sharpe ratio is pretty good and 0.938. But unfortunately, if you see the bank as well as the IT performance not good, even the best like the consumer staples sector, you cannot just invest without pay attention to the uptrend and the downtrend. From the February 19 to the April 16, the consumer staples in Asia dropped 18%, and CHIQ dropped 21%. Nobody can suffer such kind of the drawdown. So that really means you either reduce the position or your exposure, or you need to find a better way to manage the downside risk.
There's one final point I wanted to make about investing in China from the US. If you're buying a US listed ETF, you are exposed to the US market. So even though you're investing in China market, you are going to be exposed to the systematic risk of the US market. The second thing is, the reason some of these Chinese companies choose to list in the US is because the multiples are higher here in the US, particularly for tech companies. The final reason is that some of the listing requirements in the US are less stringent than those in China. For example, if you want to list in China, you have to be a profitable company. The US does not have such a restriction. So those are some of the issues that are involved in choosing an ETF or choosing a product and then understanding the underlying names within that product. Okay, with that, we hope everybody's got a little bit more flavor. We're going to go into depth more and more. We really appreciate everybody giving us their feedback. It's very helpful for us. We hope we're giving you the content you want. Please subscribe to the channel, reach out to us via email or Twitter or onto YouTube, and put the comments below. We appreciate it, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.